So, this is a bit different from what I normally do, but stick around, because this is a tale that comes from a land in the Far East, more specifically the Southeast and in Asia in the 1960s. I'm talking about the 1967 Opium War. But what is it? Whoa, 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 hold your horses there, buddy. You need to know some countries and people before we get started. So, in this corner, we got Laos with General Juan Radicone, Burma with Warlord Kun San, or if you're Chinese, it might sound a bit like Zhang Shifu, and the Kuomintang KMT, Taiwan, with General Li Mi. Now, let's go. So let me take you back to a time. The year is 1967. The Kingdom of Laos, to put it simply, isn't doing too good. It's similar to a meat grinder. They're involved with the Vietnam War, having the whole Ho Chi Minh Trail in their country, kept up by the North Vietnamese Army and Viet Cong, and being bombed to hell by the US. And they were going through their own civil war involving the Pathet Lao, which were communist, neutralists, like this is Austria, and the Royal Forces. This was also known as the Secret War, sponsored by the CIA. One of these CIA agents, William Young, founded a guerrilla base. He recruited people from the 3rd and 5th Armies of Taiwan. Now, Taiwan, how did these people get here? After the Chinese Civil War, some of their forces couldn't make it up to Taiwan, so they fled to places like Burma and Thailand, where they used to fight their own dirty Reds. If we go back even further to what I said, you may notice it said some joined. Well, others simply just joined the opium trade when their funding was cut. Them joining to maintain and equip their army. These guys had equipment such as 50 cal MGs, recoilless rifles, and radios. And the KMT forces also used hundreds of mules to move tons of opium, and these guys even charged taxes. So then, in the far-off time of February 1967, a Burmese warlord known as Kun San decided that he was entitled to this stuff. And, let's just say the Kuomintang wasn't too happy that he did this, but he did it anyways. Kun San had agents buy tons of opium to sell to Juan Radicone at around $500,000. Kun San, similar to the Kuomintang, had hundreds of mules and around 800 men in his army. And then from there, all they needed to do was travel 200 miles to Juan's drug refinery. After that, word had gotten around about this Burmese opium, and the Taiwanese feared that if this went through, he could arm around 1,000 more men. And historically, the KMT had always paid off passage, from guys like Burma and Thailand to move this stuff, but Kun San simply didn't pay. So then the KMT followed him. Their forces numbered around 700 to 1,000. These guys just wanted the opium or that sweet, sweet dough. First attacking at Kentung, they were easily driven out. And then on the 14th and 15th of July, 1967, if you couldn't tell, the mile-long mule train crossed the Mekong into Laos, traveling down south for 2 days before they reached Ban Quan. That sounds right. Once they got there, the Burmese forces hunkered down at a sawmill owned by Juan. And as all this was going down, a school principal saw all this and went to go tell the Royal Lao Army. And then the Royal Lao Army told him to tell everyone else to leave the village and go to Thailand for a bit. The Taiwanese forces followed the Burmese forces and crossed the Mekong on July 24th. And then from there was a brief firefight between them, and then they tried to start negotiations, that went nowhere. And then they looked up upon the sky, and they saw a chopper with a message from who else? Who was it? Juan Radicone. And that message happened to say that both sides need to get out of Laos, or else something would go down. Yo, me from the future. I find it kind of funny that Juan Radicone, one of the Burmese there, so we can get that opium. But then, once he got there, he gets kicked out. It's weird, but, okay, now let me find a way to seamlessly transition back to your story. But they received orders from the General of the State. The Taiwanese forces wanted around $250,000 to leave, but the government didn't negotiate with terrorists. So then all-out warfare broke out July 29th between the Taiwanese and Burmese forces using small arms and heavy weapons. And then later, around noon, they looked up at the sky and they saw 6 AT-28s from the Royal Lao Air Force. And they didn't take sides because they just bombed both sides of the battlefield. And they would continue to do this multiple times a day. And somehow, Juan Radicone got permission from Prime Minister Suvarnabhumi to fly in paratroopers to the battlefield. The Lao also had infantry battalions and a few patrol boats surrounding them on all sides. Whoever was left of the Burmese forces after this attack, they fled, leaving the Opium. The Taiwanese forces also tried to flee, but were blocked by Royal Lao troops. After that, some time passed and more troops from Laos were being flown in, and then both sides struck a deal. There were two accounts, but either account, it all ended in the same outcome. Juan Radicon getting his opium, and this opium made it worldwide. America, Europe. It ended up to our boys in Nam. After that, the Taiwanese forces were they just got a slap on the wrist and just told, okay, don't do that again. And then they were sent back on their merry way. They made it to Thailand and then they were disarmed. And yeah, it's the end of the war. Ooh, it's me from the future. I'm back. Now, if you really, really want to know what happened to everyone after the war, let's start off with this. War does not determine who's right, only who's left. You're damn right it does, because 82 Burmese, 70 Taiwanese, and an unknown amount of Lao died in the 1967 Opium War. I don't know how that happens, but alright. So, directly after the war, the Taiwanese were just sent into timeout, aka the mountains in Thailand, and legends say they still live there to this day. Li Mi and Kun San did this, but them, similar to all mortals, eventually died. But Juan Radicon could be the exception here. He did drug trafficking and more military things before allegedly dying in the 70s, most likely in a re-education camp set up by the new Lao People Democratic Republic. If you're not that smart or can't connect the dots, the kingdom was overthrown by communists. But here, come in. I have a theory, you could say, a game theory, that he's still out there playing the longest game of hide and seek. For a long time, you and I most likely believe that this guy was a hide and seek champion. But it's like a tutorial compared to Juan Radicon. Like, two theories I have is he could be a corner store owner or it could be a senator in California. But in the chance he's still alive, he would have to be 110, 120. So, nah, he dead. Join me next time when I talk about something that's for sure.